80% of businesses that are started up from scratch are gone in 5 years or less.
Bjorn Baker-Hendricks,
A highly successful entrepreneur with multiple seven-figure businesses.
and helps entrepreneurs through his Business Builders Institute.
I'm focused on acquiring cash flowing businesses. When I walk in on day one, it's producing revenue already. Baby boomers make up more than a third of the wealth in the world. They own most of the businesses. The things that you need to do to prepare to exit is the things you should be doing all along. The largest corporations are owned by each other. I own equity in over 20 companies right now, but only 2 of them am I the CEO in.
How does one even get into mergers and acquisitions?
You can acquire a company, cash flowing company, with no money out of your pocket by putting debt into the business to pay for the acquisition itself. I own 5% here, I own 10% here, I own 20% here, I own 80% there, but I don't have to work in any of those. We're acquiring companies that 50 years ago, Black people couldn't even walk into.
Can you give them some steps as if you were teaching them as if they were in the BBI?
I got these 4 pillars of success, and these 4 pillars are
All right, so Bees,
yeah.
what is M&A?
Oh man, mergers and acquisitions, right? It incorporates a lot, but the truth be told is that I focus on the acquisition side. 80% of businesses that are started up from scratch are gone in 5 years or less, right? 2% of acquisitions fail. So why wouldn't you want the better statistic, right? But I say I separated the mergers and acquisitions part because when it's a merger, the failure rate's a little bit higher. It's not as high as the 80% of a startup, but it's sometimes hard to put 2 company cultures and people together. You got to fire some people to eliminate waste and the duplication and such. All right. So mergers and acquisitions, it incorporates a lot, but overall I'm focused on acquiring cash flowing businesses. Some people acquire distressed businesses, pennies on the dollar type of stuff. But then it's like a startup again. You got to build from scratch. I want things when I walk in on day one, it's producing revenue already. And it got customers already. It got employees and the playbook and everything already, right? And why wouldn't you want the head start overall?
That's really interesting to, just hear the term mergers and acquisitions. So, that presents to me a two-way question. At what point would somebody want to have an exit strategy to become acquired, or I don't know what the acquired, and what would you be looking for in acquiring that business?
So the first thing is that you should always have an exit strategy from the beginning. You should always think about the beginning. It's going to shift. It's going to pivot. You have to pivot. That's the nature of the game of business, right? But if you have that, you go in with that mindset of, okay, I'm going into this business. I'm acquiring this business. I'm going to do a JV with some people, a joint venture, and we're going to acquire it together. And I'm going to do X, Y, Z to grow it in 5 years and potentially have an exit where we're selling to a bigger company. We got that plan now. So now we're going to work towards that plan, or maybe your intention to exit is an IPO, initial public offering. That's a larger undertaking, right? But if you have that plan, you're going to make certain decisions to get towards that goal, right? Now, I focus on, in particular, the baby boomers that are retiring. So baby boomers make up more than a third of the wealth in the world. It's probably higher than that, but I definitely know it's more than a third. They own most of the businesses they have for these generations. And the baby boomers, the typical way, they may have gotten passed down to them. And now they're like, oh, I'm going to pass it down to my kids or grandkids. But all of that current generation, they don't want it. They want to be a TikTok star or a YouTube, personality or whatever. So now these baby boomers are forced where they're ready to retire. All baby boomers are retiring this decade. But yet they don't have a succession plan. They have nobody to pass it to, right? So it's either they shut down or they're like, damn, I'm tired of working. I don't want to keep going. And that's where people like us can come in. And, I've had a broker one time that was like, oh, you're being predatory towards the elderly. I was like, what what are you talking about? They have, they could either shut down their business and lose everything that they've built all this time, or an investor like myself is willing to help them to take it over for them and help it to grow. I'm not being predatory. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement, right? So ultimately, everybody needs to prepare some sort of exit plan. But the things that you need to do to prepare to exit is the things you should be doing all along in your business anyway. It shouldn't be at the end when you're preparing to exit. You should be knowing your books, knowing your numbers, keeping tracks of your books. You should be putting processes in place so that it's easy for the next owner to come in and things are just rolling, smoothly. You should already identify someone in your business that is working in there that can run the business day to day without you, right? You should have done that anyway, because how do you take a vacation, right? You can't go away for 2 weeks without the business collapsing. Then it ain't a business. You self-employed. You know what I mean? So you have someone in there that's running the day to day and helping to keep things rolling. Now, when it's time to take over, that person may be staying on board. The new owner is like, oh, cool. I have someone that's in the business already that I could promote to VP of operations or something. And then I could be the CEO, and then, on and on and on. Little thing by me that I focus on is I don't want to be the CEO of nothing, right? Because CEO is just another job, right? So another reason why I'm going for these cash flowing businesses is because it has revenue for me to hire a CEO, right? So I may be an interim CEO during the transition because I'm just, laying the groundwork. I'm putting together the strategic growth plan, but then I'm hiring. I'm going to Indeed. I'm going to LinkedIn. Just like any of us got hired, we can hire people. Right. And I don't need to be the expert. I'm going to hire that Ivy League, graduate expert who's run as other companies as CEO. I'll hire them, and I can afford to because the business is already cash flowing.
Got it. So, you brought something up to where you said, the individual that's always should have the exit strategy plans and everything like that. At what point would somebody consider being a merger instead?
It would be more so what you get offered, right? So I'm doing these things called roll-ups right now. Roll-ups are where I acquire a platform company. I choose a specific industry, and then I acquire this platform company. They're strong. They have a good brand. They have good revenue, good culture, all of that I could then disseminate to other companies below it. So now I'm going to get this platform company, and I'm going to get some other companies that I start rolling up into the bigger umbrella, right? So from the perspective of the person that I'm acquiring it from, they're not concerned so much that it's a merger or or acquisition or a roll up or whatever. They're just concerned that they're selling their business, right? So it's not about preparing for a merger unless you're going to do an equity roll and stay a part owner or something. Then you have to decide if you want to merge with this company and that type of thing. But it's going to come once the opportunity presents itself. You're not necessarily going into it like, okay, let me prepare so I could get a merger and be merged into another company. Nah, you're just being prepared. You're just preparing to be sold, however which way the opportunity comes, and then they're going to tell you what their intention is, and you can make the decision. Like, I don't think it's going to be a good fit. I don't think my brand is going to survive if it's merged with you, so I don't want to sell. So it's really just about what opportunity comes up.
Got it. And then in those mergers, what should people be looking for as far as a merge to where both identities, blend more seamless instead of one just taking over the other?
Well, I had a company that I was acquiring, and I told them that we were doing a roll-up, and I told them that they were not the platform company. So they would be absorbed into this other company, still get sold, still get the money they want and everything. And they pushed back a little bit and said, listen, I believe that we should be the platform company. I was like, okay, why do you say that? We have a strong brand. We have very loyal customers. We have this, we have that. Our reach is priming us to be a national brand, blah, 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 blah. And he made a good case. So I ended up switching the company that was going to be the platform company, right? So it's really just, what would make a good platform company? What elements of your brand do you want to survive If you're not concerned with that, you just want to sell and you're good to go, then no problem. Some people trying to run for the hills, right? It's like, yo, I've been working in this business for the last 20 years or 50 years or something. Baby boomers retiring, right? I just want to get out of it. I don't want to retain no equity. I don't want to be on the board. Y'all do whatever the hell you want to do with it. So they're not concerned whether it's a merger or anything like that. And they don't really have to prepare for it or are concerned about, will the brand still, expand, or will it kind of fizzle underneath this other umbrella,
Got it. And then something else that you mentioned was a third of the wealth is with the baby boomers. So where's the other portion of that? What category does that belong to?
There's three main ways of creating wealth in this world. One is real estate. Another is the financial markets, your stock, your Forex, and even your crypto and stuff now. And then owning a business, whether you build it from scratch or whether you buy it. Three main ways of creating true wealth in this world. So more than a third of the wealth is held by baby boomers because of the fact that they have these businesses and, they've had it all along. And I'm talking about any type of business. When people hear me acquiring businesses, they're like, is it like $1 billion business? I'm like, no, it could be. You go buy pizza every week. Go acquire the pizza shop in your local neighborhood. They're trying to retire and get out, and it's a staple thing. Everybody goes. It's always packed. Why not consider it? Yeah. You go to the laundromat, coin laundromat on a regular basis. You live in the Northeast, and most houses don't come with the washing machines in it. Well, then acquire a laundromat, acquire a car wash, acquire whatever things you already use, right? So apart from the businesses, there's a lot of the institutional funds and such. I was watching this study recently that showed the largest corporations are owned by each other. If you really dig deep into it and you look at Apple and look at the major shareholders of Apple, let's say Berkshire Hathaway is one of them, right? Warren Buffett and his group. Then you say, okay, well then who? So Berkshire Hathaway owns a large portion of Apple. Who owns Berkshire Hathaway? Well, if you look, you're going to see Microsoft and Apple and all of the others that own them. It's like, wait a minute, but they own Apple, but Apple owns them. And what's going on here? Dig deeper into that and just keep looking at the major shareholders of these large corporations. And you're going to see like they own each other.
Wow.
Right. It's also like how you see, what was it, like last year or the last few years during COVID, you saw that a lot of these hedge funds and these corporations were buying up real estate, buying up single family homes at a high clip. Why were they doing that? Because they realized that that's the next wave of money that's going to be coming in, right? They realized that there's going to be a shortage of places to live and people buying homes because the price of homes are astronomical now. So there's going to be more renters. So these companies are like, hey, let's buy these up so that we can get all that rental income that's going to be coming in, right? So it's not just about what group owns the other almost 2/3%. It's a lot of these institutional companies that they own each other, right? And then of course there's the .com. I don't know what generation that would be. The people who came up for the .com bubble and then got into social media and all of that, they're owning a lot of the wealth as well. So just distributed based on industry, based on asset type, and then based on age group as well.
Got it. So, how does one even get into mergers and acquisitions?
I was watching a podcast. Actually, it was one of my students sent it to me, and it was with Robert Smith in there. And Robert Smith mentioned that M&A is an apprenticeship game. This ain't gonna be something that you could just Google, right? I mean, you can still get immersed in the industry by Googling and by watching podcasts. I got a podcast. They could watch that too, because I talk about M&A all the time, right? And just get familiar with the information, right? Because you could either focus on Shade Room on Instagram, or you could focus on Entrepreneurship Exposed, which is my podcast, on Instagram. And you're getting valuable information, right? And immersing yourself in that. I know a lot of people could quote, I didn't even realize that Kanye West was married to somebody else. I forgot that he was married to Kim and, I guess he got divorced and now he married to somebody else. I didn't even know that. Wow. But I speak to some people, they could quote that immediately. Oh yeah, he's married to such and such and she lives here and she does this. Okay, cool. Do you know of any acquisitions lately? Acquisitions? What are you talking about? Because you're not immersing yourself in the right information. So the first thing is to immerse yourself. Follow podcasts, follow articles that talk about acquisitions. Find a mentor that can help you to really understand the landscape of acquisitions and the best path, the path of least resistance for you to get into it. Because that mentor made enough mistakes already in that they can, help you not have to make those mistakes. I do have a community that helps people to learn this as well. It's called the BBI, the Business Builders Institute. But if you want to try it on your own, start by going to some of the online broker sites. BizBuySell is one. BizBuysell. Sure, that's a good one. There's hundreds of them, right? But that's a good common one. Just go and look and see what's in your neighborhood. Type in your zip code and see what businesses in your area, your city, your state that are for sale. Now it's all about knowing what to do going forward, and that's where you want to lean on that mentor, on that educational program, whatever it may be, to really get that head start overall.
Got it. So, let's say somebody does find the places that they're interested in getting. How does somebody go about getting the funding to do these things?
So, I was telling you before, in the backstage, we were talking about that book. One of my favorite books is Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? Story of Reginald Lewis, first Black billionaire. Most people don't know who he is, but he became a billionaire from acquiring multi-billion-dollar company named Beatrice International Foods. And he did it with no money coming out of his pocket. Little to no money. You still got to put a couple $100 to here. He's probably schmoozing some people at lunch and all that type of stuff. Got to pay for those things. But little to no money coming out of his pocket because he used a strategy called a LBO, a leveraged buyout. So you can acquire a company, cash flowing company, with no money out of your pocket by putting debt into the business to pay for the acquisition itself. And you get to see, this is one of the beautiful things of acquisitions, business acquisitions, is that you get to see all the information up front. You're doing your due diligence. They give you all the financials up front. You know what you're getting yourself into. It's still business and there's still always risk, but this is the only investment that you could mitigate your risk as much as possible. You could lower it as much as possible because you get to see all the information up front. And then you get to change the deal structure and the elements of the deal based on information that comes up. Like, oh, we presented this offer for you and now we're on due diligence. And yeah, we said 1 million, but we realized that your profit and loss statement, you dropped significantly last year. It's not really worth $1 million, it's worth 900,000. They can't deny it. Yeah. Like, hey, what happened? Oh, it was a tough year, but we know it's going to go back up. Well, I'm a businessman. I can't take it on good faith. It's going to go up. I'm looking at numbers. So you get to really reduce your risk by seeing those financials. But the leverage buyout is only one way of doing it. You don't have to do the leverage buyout, because leverage buyout, I may find 100 deals. I may speak to 20 people and I may end up with 1 or 2 of those deals, completely zero out of my pocket. Now, I don't think that's bad, because if you had to speak to 20 people and you ended up with 2 multi-million-dollar companies out of it,
great.
Is that you know what I'm saying? Like that's a good trade-off to me, right? But apart from the LBO stuff, the traditional way, the easiest way of doing this, most people are familiar with going to the bank and getting a mortgage to buy a house, right? It's the same thing in a business. You go to a bank and you ask them that you're interested for the SBA 7A loan. That's the business acquisition loan. So now they'll say, okay, cool. You have a business already in Target? No, I just want to qualify from now. Sure, we could do the pre-qualification. Or you got a business in Target already? Yeah, I'm already under an LOI with them, letter of intent. Cool, let's see the LOI. They want to see the LOI. They see the deal structure that you agreed to with them. The SBA will help you to do the due diligence, because they want to make sure it's a good deal for them, right? And they'll cover, historically, they will cover up to like 90%. So you had to come with 10%. That's not even the case as much anymore. In certain situations, if you structure the deal a certain way, SBA will cover 100% of it. So why wouldn't you want to do this? You know, it's funny. I always ask, when I'm speaking on stage, I ask people, if you wanted a Lamborghini, and what would you do to get it? would you go to the dealership and buy it? Or would you go in your garage and build it yourself? What's your answer to that?
Definitely going to buy it.
Okay. So why not think that same, you have that same concept when it comes to business, right? Why do you need to build it yourself? Oh, I just want to say I did it myself. You want to say you did it yourself with building that Lamborghini too? And probably risk your life a lot more with that? Or you want to go to the experts who already built something that you want and now you acquire it from them and get that head start. It's the same thing in business. Why not take the head start? Why not have a playbook, customers, employees already laid out, cash flow already coming in, rather than you have to figure out how to build it up first before you can start expanding. All right.
Got it. So, wow. Never really think about it that way when you look at it, because I've created multiple businesses and it hasn't crossed my mind that, I could just buy this one, and
And here goes the thing too. A lot of times when I'm speaking about this, there's people who will say, because I've built businesses as well, but I will never build another one. I will only acquire them. And I also, now people will say, oh, but you own equity for me, I own equity in over 20 companies right now. But only 2 of them am I the CEO in. Only 2 of them do I put a lot of, effort into day to day. I own 5% here. I own 10% here. I own 20% here. I own 80% there. But I don't have to work in any of those, right? So that became my passive revenue streams overall by doing this mentality, because another important mindset shift that I had to make and that I preach to everyone, 25% of a watermelon is better than 100% of a grape. I'd rather have a smaller piece of something huge rather than have it all of something super small, right? But most people are programmed to be like, no, you keep it for yourself. Don't give any equity to nobody. Why not? I'm giving equity to this person because I just did this acquisition right now. Actually, it's not complete. We're closing in 2.5 weeks. And part of the deal structure, we gave equity to all of the employees, every single one of them. Why? Because it's vested over 5 years. When you're walking into a business and you're acquiring it and you're like, it comes with employees, but damn, what if they quit? What if someone quits? There's a new owner, blah, blah, blah. Who gonna quit when you're giving them equity in ownership and profit sharing in the business? So,
to a lot of people that watch this podcast are new business owners or not even business owners yet, but they're interested in it. So can you break down a little bit of what equity actually is and when you should utilize it?
Yeah. So equity is just about the ownership of the business. If you're playing the stock markets, you're getting equity in these companies, but it's a small amount. You buying, a couple shares of Apple, you're not even equating to 1% of Apple, right? So when you're in your direct ownership of a business and you have that equity, you have that ownership stake, a portion of the business that you own, it tends to be a whole lot more than if you were just playing in the stock market. Now you get more revenue, more benefit from the company, from, profit sharing, but you also get a little bit of more say, right? You get a little bit more voting rights and such, proportionate with the amount of equity you own, of course. But equity is an important thing when in consideration with being a business owner. But we got to just shift our thinking, because most of us were taught that don't give equity to no one. Hey, this person wants to come in, just take a loan from them and, pay them back. Sure. In some cases, yeah, you should do that. But imagine if this person wants to come in as an investor and that person has done multiple exits on businesses at 9 figures that they acquired and then scaled to 9 figures and exited. And they have some resources on operational staff, and they have resources on more funding and all of that. Why wouldn't you then say, hey, come in, I'll give you some equity for you to help us to get to this 9-figure exit? And why not do that? It reduces your equity by you giving them some of yours, but now you're getting a larger watermelon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's important to just change our mindset on what we think about things like equity overall.
Got it. So what was the shift in time for you to actually get into this mindset of I'm going M&A versus just building that business?
It wasn't immediate catalyst, like something happened and bam, let me jump into it. It was progressively. Now, I have a interesting background because when I worked in corporate America for over 15 years, I worked at Accenture, Microsoft, and these large Fortune 500 companies. So I was already familiar with mergers and acquisitions because I was an IT strategy management consultant, and they would send me into other Fortune 500 companies to help them to scale. And how you make any company scale: process, systems, and people, and acquiring other companies that you roll into it and immediately get bigger. So I was already familiar with it, right? When I left Microsoft a little bit over about 10 years ago, I started by building an e-commerce company. And I built a couple brands, and because of my process background, I made it very automated. And then I attracted some investors who were like, I want to buy it from you. So they bought 2 brands that I built, and I built that in 18 months, and I was able to sell it. I was like, well, if I'm selling the businesses, I should be acquiring them too. I already know about it. And I remember that book I read about why should white guys have you see what I'm saying? Everything just kind of came together over time. That book started a lot of it from me. But even before that, in the 90s, there was a book and a TV movie called Barbarians at the Gate. And that was a story of RJR Nabisco and how they had the largest LBO, leveraged buyout, in history. It was like 40 billion. And when I heard that, I was like, these white people is buying businesses $40 billion worth and not paying no money for it. They putting debt in the business. How do I do that? So I already had the thought from then. But over time, all of these things started coming together. And once I sold my brands after I left corporate America, I was like, yo, I need to go all in on it, But the great thing about it too is that I was tired of, in the Black community, we say this word a lot about run a play. Like, yo, I got this play, you can run this play, blah, blah, blah. And plays are like the short, quick ways to make some money. But the play gets played out, and then you made that money, and then you're going to lose it even quicker. So I like sustainable strategies, things that aren't going anywhere, things that white people in other communities been doing for generations, things that when the government starts saying, oh, damn, too many Black people getting into this, we don't got to worry because the white people ain't going to let them stop doing it, right? Because it's what they do. So for me, it was like all about sustainable strategies. It was about, yo, I already saw all of these things and I was doing it for companies already. So why not do it for myself? And then, the rest is history since that started.
Got it. No, so it makes me think about what you said earlier with Robert Smith talking about apprenticeship, So at what point should somebody become the reinvention of the wheel? Because we can learn a lot from what others paved the way. But if we don't have the innovators like a Steve Jobs or Disney or anything like that, how do we create new things that can be of the same amount of importance as the things that already exist?
So it's funny you say that because I have a son. My oldest son is 19, actually be 20 this weekend. And he's in college. And he knows all about the business acquisitions. As a matter of fact, when he was a freshman going into college, he was like, Dad, I found a sushi restaurant in the area by by the college. You think we can acquire it? And, I was like, well, I don't like restaurants, but if you want it for yourself, we could do that. And he was like, yeah, girls love sushi. So, I tell this story because that's not the right reasoning for it, but it's powerful that as a Black man, I can have that conversation with my son that we could just walk in and acquire this company. We're acquiring companies that 50 years ago, Black people couldn't even walk into, right? So it's a powerful concept, but ultimately he decided that he had an idea because he's in college, he's exposed to different things, and he had an idea, and he was like, ooh, Dad, I want to start a new company for something. I was like, well, I advocate to acquire them instead of starting them, but I'll help you to build a business plan and, get it rolling. Part of the company requires some software development. So what do you think I'm going to tell him to do? Do you need to start from scratch completely? No, you can still be an innovator in this new product, this new service that he wants to create, but acquire a software development company and roll those developers in and have them working on the development part of what you're doing to innovate on, right? you're doing some manufacturing for a physical product, acquire a manufacturing company and you utilize their facilities and tools to help also build this new thing that you're trying to, innovate on.
Yeah.
So it's not mutually exclusive. It's not about, well, how do we get the innovators if everyone's just acquiring the ones that already exist? No, we use it as a tool to build up our companies. The way to scale your existing company is by acquiring another company that you roll into it. That's the fastest way to scale your existing company. It's the safest way to scale your existing company, right? So overall, and on top of that, you don't have to go to the banks in these acquisitions. Because of the creative deal structuring we're able to do, you could do things directly with the seller, like seller financing.
Yeah.
That's one thing important, a common thing that I do in every single deal. The seller has to carry a note. So they're basically giving me a loan and the business revenue is paying it back, not me. That's why it's not coming out of my pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And I already did all the financial due diligence to see if the business can service that loan.
Yeah.
Now it benefits the seller also because if I gave him all the money up front at the close of the transaction, he got to pay capital gains tax on it. But because the seller financing is kind of like a loan to me, when I'm paying him back, when the business is paying him back, those principal payments are not subject to tax because it's a loan. If he charges me interest, he got to pay interest on the tax. He got to pay taxes on the interest, but not on the principal, right? So it's beneficial to him. It's beneficial to me because then I'm not going to the bank to get a loan and I'm able to use the funds in the business to pay that seller financing note overall.
So if a business is doing good and you would like to acquire it already, do either one of you need to have good credit?
Need to? No. Does it help? 100% it helps, right? Because there's some businesses that I've acquired where because it was a savvy broker, not necessarily the seller, but the broker was like, oh, well, we'll do the seller financing note, but we want to run a credit check on you, right? I've also declined that and said, nah, I don't think that's necessary. You're not an actual bank institution. It's more about, do you believe that this business can still be successful, right? If you believe in it, you're willing to carry the note. Well, I'll secure the note by all of the assets in the business. So you're made whole. You don't need no credit check on me. You don't need no personal guarantee either. But then I've also had some that were like, no, we need it no matter what. So it's better to have your credit strong. And then it opens up more options because not only could you do a seller financing note, but you could stack it with some business credit cards that you could get and then liquidate the credit cards to pay the seller. And then the business pays back the credit cards, especially if it got like 0% interest for like 15 months or something. So it gives you time to pay it back. Maybe also going to the SBA. That's another thing that you can stack it with. SBA loan to help with the acquisition. You need good credit for that, right? But there's other things you can stack it with that won't need it. So it's not that you need it, but it definitely can help you and open up more opportunities for you.
Got it. So you mentioned the BBI earlier, and I feel like we've reached the part of the show where we get to what I call the gem drop. So in the gem drop, I like to reward people that reach this far within the episode with actual knowledge. So if somebody wanted to get started in this today, what are some steps? Can you give them some steps as if you were teaching them as if they were in the BBI? How would their first few months go working with you?
So I have the BBI, which can teach you all the ins and outs of acquiring a business, scaling a business, and using leverage buyout techniques to acquire it with no money out of your pocket. I also have another company called Capital B's Finance. Capital B's Finance, we actually do it for people. Way more expensive. And I believe in teaching a man and a woman to fish rather than me doing it for them. Yeah. But that is that opportunity too, because I know how to mow my own lawn, but I still hire the landscapers to come. I don't want to do it myself, right? So you have those options. Now, gem drop wise, in terms of really the things that you need to focus on and the things that I would have you focusing on if you're learning it in the BBI, I got these 4 pillars of success. And these 4 pillars when I first kind of put this together, I was like, man, it sounds like fluff. It sounds like what Tony Robbins be talking about when I didn't want to hear it from Tony Robbins, but it is absolutely necessary. Networking, You have to develop your networking skills. You have to, communicate with people, but it's not just about who you know, it's who knows you. And, I tell the joke that I know Elon Musk, for example, right? But he don't know me, so it don't matter, right? It's like, it ain't a real thing. But when you get into these rooms, you got to be remembered, right? So networking is extremely important. Second pillar of success is that you got to leave some people behind. This is when people say, surround yourself with 5 millionaires, you might become the 6, blah, blah, blah. I'm saying actively leave some people out of your life. Not fully. Family members, friends, I love them to death and all, but we ain't on the same journey. We ain't on the same path. So I got to actively leave you behind. I'm going to show you how to climb that mountain, where to step, but I'm not going to tie you to my waist and carry you up. You got to step and make the moves yourself. Third pillar of success is that you got to buy seats at tables. Stop going to people, stop going to mentors and being like, hey, can I pick your brain? They hate that. We hate that. Stop talking about, hey, can I take you to lunch and pick your brain? How many people ask me to go to lunch? I can't eat that much. And during that hour that you have me at lunch, picking my brain and getting, full mentorship that normally people paying $20,000 to get for that 1 hour, I could have been doing a business deal during that time and made money rather than you sucking the life out of me, right? So be prepared to buy seats to buy seats at tables. But then when you're at these tables and you're networking while you're there and you left some people behind, you should also build your own table. Find other people, like-minded people. Don't always worry about the speaker or the mentor. Find the people sitting next to you and build the table with them, and y'all become the next big things, the next mentors overall. So that became my 4 pillars of success, coupled with a foundation of financial literacy and a roof of always seeking knowledge, right? But the most important thing that's related to these pillars of success that you're going to do as soon as you start working with me is you're going to get your reps in, right? I go to the gym every day, every weekday, and you can't build muscle if you don't get your reps in. Mm-hmm. Well, the muscle you need to build is your networking muscles, right? You need to be able, if you're not comfortable speaking with people, then yeah, this ain't going to work for you. Mm-hmm. Because yes, there's financials to look at. Yes, there's lawyers to look at the legal due diligence. But the most important thing when it comes to business acquisitions is, can you have a conversation with somebody and build rapport with them? Mm. Can you get past the broker because you built a good rapport with them and you told them your story and then you show that you have the ability to get this done? Then they say, okay, fine, let's introduce you to the seller. Can you connect with that seller to the point that the sellers are going to be like, yo, I need him or her to be the one to take over my business. I love this guy or lady. I want them to take over my business. Mm. Every single deal that I've been in, the seller felt that way about me, right? Because I built a rapport with them. I can have a conversation with them, all right? So that's going to be the most important thing, is going to put in your reps. You're going to contact brokers. You're going to speak to more. This is the only business. One of my students said this, and I may mistake how they said it, but this is the only business strategy where you win from increasing your losing ratio. Something like that, he said. And I may have it off a little bit. But what he meant is, you got to speak to, when I was in high school, me and the boys, my friends, we go to the mall and all of us trying to kick it to girls and trying to get numbers. There was no phones back then, so we had a pen in our pocket with a piece of paper. So he's like, yo, see who can get the most numbers. And these girls walk by and we like, yo, oh my God, she's fine as hell, man, blah, blah. But we was afraid to talk to her. Mm-hmm. And then we all regret it after, right? So eventually I got to this point where I was like, man, I ain't letting nothing slip by no more. The worst they gonna say is no. So I speak to 100 girls and try to get a number and end up with 4. Whatever. Whereas my friends spoke to 2 and they got 1. And I'm like, yo, I got more because I spoke to more and I'm willing to speak to more. So that's the same thing you're going to do if you're working with me. You're going to contact some brokers. You're going to search for deals. Establish your acquisition criteria. Go out there and start finding options. Speaking to some of these brokers and sellers, even if you don't think that's the deal you really want, because you're just getting your reps in so that you get used to speaking, so they get used to telling your story, controlling the narrative. So now when you find the deal that you really want, you feel comfortable and you're going to make it happen, right? That's the first step for everything. That's what we would do in the beginning. The rest is easy, man. The rest is just knowing how to stack the deal, who you're going to get to do your financial due diligence, your legal due diligence, because you don't need to do it yourself. Get the lawyers, get the accounting team. And then it's all about taking over and running a business. And if you couldn't run a business that you built from scratch, then yeah, you probably can't run the business that you acquired from someone either. But you still have the opportunity to just hire people in there to run it for you. So
Exactly.
you're good.
So would you ever acquire a business that wasn't profitable yet, but it had extreme potential?
Me, no. Nothing wrong with that, right? At one point, I was looking at SaaS companies, software as a service.
Yeah.
And I realized quickly that, this ain't for me because they're overvalued, right? Because SaaS companies, technology companies tend to create their valuation based on their potential earnings. I'm not concerned with what you might make down the line. Those are good for some people. I'm only concerned with what you've historically been doing, how much you've historically been cash flowing. So now I could kind of predict what next year is going to look like too, and what that's going to mean for me. So I personally would not go for distressed business. I wouldn't go for a business that is doing decent, but it's all about how much they really can make. So now they have a huge valuation. I don't need to. There's so many businesses for sale that fit my criteria that I can't acquire them all. There's not enough people who know that you can even buy a business.
Yeah.
So, and then remember, there's over 13 million baby boomers alone that have businesses, all of them retiring this decade. The options are endless. And they're not the only people selling businesses. I just happen to talk a lot about the baby boomers. So yeah, I wouldn't acquire those things that you asked about, but it doesn't mean that it's not a good opportunity for other people. Like I wouldn't also acquire franchises.
Yeah.
But Magic Johnson became a billionaire from franchises. Rick Ross increases his net worth from franchises. Jay-Z became a billionaire from 25% of a watermelon is better than 100% of grape. He's like, hey, let me get a little piece of this vodka company. Let me get a little piece of this. Let me get a little piece of that. All right. So it works for some people, but you got to find your strategy in it. And earlier you also asked about innovating. I thought the way that you were going with that question is more about, okay, somebody learned something from like a mentor, a teacher, but when should they also innovate in what they've learned? Immediately. Too often people are like, okay, Bees, how did you do that last deal? Okay, that's exactly what I'm gonna do going forward. No, that was unique to that deal. I structure every deal differently. So I'm teaching you the core of how to get this done, but then you got to innovate on top of it. You got to listen out to what the seller wants, and you got to be creative in order to get things done. And don't think that every deal is going to be the same deal, right? But that's how it go.
Okay. And so even to the innovation part of it, what the deeper question that I was really going for in that was like, say you're like a Netflix, this is Blockbuster era, and you're like a Netflix, and you're like, man, I don't want to have to go there and do this all the time. I can make a service where we have all these things in one place, but because it's not something that's ever been done or ever been created, how does somebody utilize the principles of what works, but still create something new?
Well, and that was still the good example that I gave with my son, right? Like he's creating a new business, and it has a development arm that he would have to build out that whole department and get new developers and all of that stuff, hire them anyway, and don't got the cash to hire them yet because he's in a startup. So maybe he got to go through like venture capital funding, and they're going to take more equity, and maybe they give some good resources, but it ain't the easiest to get, all that type of stuff, right? Or you acquire one that you just roll into the company that helps you to get that head start. Another question that I ask people when I'm on stage is, if I could give you $100 million or you earn $5 million yourself, free and clear, which would you choose? Most people be like, yeah, I want to earn the 5 million so that nobody could tell me that they helped me with nothing. I'm like, what are you talking about? This world is about help.
Yeah.
Why are you going to the bank if you don't want no help? That's help. PPP loans and stuff, that was help, right? So why not take the 100 million I give you and then go earn $1 billion from it? So it's the same thing. Take this entity that already existed and then build up on top of it. Like, okay, you want to, Blockbuster sucks, but Netflix, if we could think and shift to the Netflix route. Imagine if you bought a Blockbuster franchise or the whole franchises somehow, right? And then you had that ingenuity to say, yo, things are moving to streaming. And, instead of people coming into our store, let's mail them the DVDs and all that type of stuff. Cool. You take the 100 million that I gave you from you acquiring Blockbuster, and then make $1 billion company from going and shifting and being innovative with mailing out DVDs and then eventually streaming.
That's what happened to BlackBerry.
Exactly.
They went extinct because they didn't want to adapt, and they were actually number one in the market.
Yep.
And they went down. So that also leads me to marketing. You know, how, first off, marketing has changed in the business industry over time. And you see people that get extreme results from almost the most erratic things that they do. You know, you have even the new age people like Stephen Bartlett, who, you know who Stephen Bartlett is? And so even Stephen Bartlett, you know, he got popular not only from what he does, but he has a blue slide in one of his offices that brought most of the media and the news and stuff. But then if you go back in the day, you know, you have an extreme example like Oprah, you know, where on her show, she brought 11 contestants on stage and gave each one of them a Pontiac G6. You get a car. And then she said, hey, I'm going to hand out boxes to the audience. One person is going to get the 12th car. And when everybody opened their box, the entire audience got a car. The entire audience. And people talked about that for years.
Till now, I remember it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And so, you know, in the industry, you know, you have these people, Jay-Z. Jay-Z, when he used to do performances and everything, they used to go in the crowd and throw like $5,000 in the crowd while they were performing, and people would come just to get free money. But that built up his base. And so if we're not using extreme things like that now, what can we do as far as marketing goes for these businesses, especially if we acquire them, to get them to those kind of levels?
I mean, we all know the modern marketing strategies, right? So you want to get like click funnels for your sales funnel. You know, you're going to do some influencer marketing. You're going to do some stuff with Facebook ads and Google ads, right? We all know the common things that are just common for modern day marketing. But think about how I describe my approach. A lot of the acquisitions that I do are coming from baby boomers. So baby boomer has been making money. We've got the history of all the money and all the revenue, and everything's been good. And they've been growing in revenue year over year, but they weren't on social media because they don't know nothing about, you know, that technology stuff. They may say, oh, my inventory management system, I don't got one. I just got everything up in my head right here. So there's all these little things that you could do on top of it to low-hanging fruit. I'm gonna take over this cash flowing business. It's already cash flowing and their numbers look good, but damn, they weren't running no ads. Oh, let me just do that. Oh, they don't have a funnel for sales. Oh, let me just do that. You're just adding in these little things that are commonplace to us nowadays, but the baby boomer may have not been implementing it. Now you can increase your revenue. You can reduce your expenses. You can make more efficiency in the business overall. And then you start getting into the more advanced techniques, right? So it doesn't matter what technique you use for marketing. It just matters that you acquire a business first, get that head start first, and then put in. You're also going to have the revenue to do better marketing strategies. Whereas if you started a business from scratch, it's like, I'm bootstrapping. I don't got enough money to, you know, go all out on marketing. I can't get that billboard up just yet, the electronic billboard, you know, because I can't afford it yet. But you walk into a cash flowing business, bam, you could do any of those strategies overall.
Got it. And so, you know, the last thing that I want to touch on is, in your industry, do you have to think about how physical money is changing in itself? Even digital money is changing in itself, you know, because I literally was just talking about this, I think, to Dan the other day. A penny costs more to make than it's actually worth. Right. It costs $2.72 to make a penny, you know, and like $10 to make a nickel. Yeah. You know, and so of course they probably offset it with the $100 bills and all that stuff. But in the age where, you know, inflation is super heavy on that market, and we're presented with things like crypto and everything like that, is that something that you have to pay attention to potentially be able to utilize for those acquisitions coming in the next decade or so?
Definitely. But you that's a business strategy, or that's good business practice anyway, in general. Right? I know people who are afraid of AI in their business. And I'm like, yo, are you crazy? I can understand a personal person just afraid, like, oh, this AI, I don't know, is it gonna, Terminator and Skynet or something. Sure, you could be afraid of it, you could talk all the doomsday stuff you want. But in your business, you need to adopt it immediately, right? So it's the same thing with crypto and any other technology that's coming out. You want to say, hey, how can I use this in my business to be more efficient, to make more revenue, etc. Right? So I remember one of my, I had this portfolio with 3 laundromats up in the Northeast. And one of the first things we did was got rid of the coins, right? And some people were like, nah, maybe you should still keep the coins because some people still want the coins. Well, more people got phones that they could use for tap to pay than the people with the coins, right? And the reason why people want the coins, the business owner want the coins, is because then it's kind of under the table, it's cash, and blah, 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 right? But I'm trying to be more efficient and, focus so that I can increase my customer base and they're going to spend more. Because all you're doing is tap in to pay. You don't even realize that you're giving up something physical away, right? Yeah. So we got rid of the coin slots and made everything tap to pay. We also focused on some NFC technology so that we created a subscription-based thing so that they can get in after hours and, tap at the door through the app and whatnot. We embrace technology and where society is going so that we can stay ahead of the game. Right. And it's the same thing, like you're saying, for physical coins. Yeah. If we're going to go away from physical coins, which is happening more and more, then you can see that it's been happening in China for the last half a decade or more. Right. So, it's going to be here, too, where they use WeChat for everything. There's no physical money that's exchanged barely anymore out there. So same thing going to happen here at some point. So I might as well be prepared for it, just like I'm prepared on the AI space too.
Got it. Bees, you dropped a lot of gems, just thank you for coming on and just explaining what, mergers and acquisitions is and the breakdown and everything. And so if people wanted to tap in with your program, learn what you have going on, potentially sell you their business, all this type of stuff, where could they do that at?
So you can find me on Instagram and, more importantly, on LinkedIn, right? Instagram, cool and all, but if you want a professional network, if you're a serious professional, serious entrepreneur, serious investor, then you need to be on LinkedIn, right? That's where you're gonna make the best connection. So find me on LinkedIn. My full name is Bjorn. It's a Swedish name, even though I'm not Swedish, but Bjorn Bees, my nickname, Beez Hendricks. Look me up on LinkedIn, connect with me there. On Instagram, I'm Business Builder Bees, and that's Beez. And then you could also just go straight to businessbuildersinstitute.com. And if you're interested in joining the BBI, the Business Builders Institute, and start learning this information so that you execute yourself, and, let's get it. Let's change the narrative, especially in the Black community. It's not above us. We could get this done. Let's buy businesses. Let's buy cash flow, because cash flow is king. And let's, create the wealth that we deserve in our life and the life that we want to live.
Absolutely. I agree. Thank you for coming on the show.
Appreciate you.
If you like the episode, make sure you like, share, subscribe, especially any community really, but especially our community. I'm passionate about our community. Please share this information with somebody else that you know, because this may be that catalyst to get the ball rolling or get them to the place that they're trying to get to. So, it's your host, Mastermind Moneybag Rich. And as we always say, we look good, we live good, life is good. Talk to us, we talk back, and we are out.